Hello and welcome to my channel, Rhino here. Today I've got something a bit different for you, as I have a wedding to attend in Montreal this weekend and have been very busy preparing for that, and as such I have not had time for a proper video. So today I'm going to be responding to your comments. I'm doing this in an unscripted fashion, so feel free to ridicule me for what will surely be a large number of ums and ahs. Yes, that's right, I usually work from a script. That's how I avoid sounding like an idiot most of the time. So there will probably be a bunch of factual errors in this episode too. And because of scheduling, I'm recording while my kids are at home and awake, so you might hear things going on in the background. Sorry, it is what it is. And now one last thing before we get started, if you support me on Patreon, I will be posting this as a free post. I don't expect you to pay for my random ramblings. So let's do this. So to start with, I've pulled a few comments from my channel trailer, starting with Def7355608, who says, as a student of medicine, I think it'd be cool if you could do some alternative medicine debunking. I see you already made a few videos of anti-vaxxers, so I think that would fit well. Also maybe debunking some anti-GMO bullshit, or that cell phone radiation causes cancer myth, which has now swung to smart meter radiation causes cancer. That could be something that I would see myself doing in the future. I'm not quite focused on that right now. Generally, my videos on anti-vaccination, they take a lot longer to make than the evolution videos. I have to look up a whole lot more stuff for that. Biology was never really my strong suit in school. I'm more of a physics person. Yeah, I can work on that eventually, but it's probably not going to be until my actual job slows down, which I work seasonally, if you didn't know. I'm really busy in the summertime, not so busy in the wintertime, so winter is generally where you see me release the longer, more in-depth videos like that. But yeah, that's definitely something that I'm going to be looking into at some point. Next up, we have Donovan Miller, who says, Vice Rhino, just for fun, could you do a video on Hinduism? It's the third largest and oldest religion in the world, 4,000 years older than creationists say the Earth is, by the way, and people are starving to death because they believe it is wrong to eat the cows that block off their streets. India was also blocking supplies to Nepal because they wouldn't adopt Hindu constitution or something like that. Also, if humans keep reincarnating, why does India's population keep skyrocketing? I might do some Hindu videos in the future, but generally the reason I stick to Christianity and Islam is because they're the ones I know best. I'm not familiar with Hinduism at all. I know some of the names of the gods, and that's pretty much it. The learning curve for me would be rather steep with that one. Again, that's something that I will probably look into in the future. But right now, I actually was a Christian for quite a while, for most of my life at this point. So I understand Christianity very well. Islam I understand a little bit less than Christianity, but I'm exposed to it a lot more than I'm exposed to Hinduism. In fact, I actually work with some guys from India, but I don't think any of them are Hindu. At least they haven't told me whether or not they are. I haven't really brought it up, but I know one is Christian, so yeah, I'm surrounded by Christianity and, to a lesser degree, Islam, whereas Hinduism just doesn't really play that much of a role in my life. So at this point, I haven't had any reason to look into it. And again, I will in the future, but not yet. Josh M. says, you're still more accurate than probably every creationist in existence, and at least you're honest enough to admit your own mistakes. Thanks for that, Josh. The reason I'm honest enough to admit my own mistakes is because I'm going to get called out on them anyways. Like, you guys are on top of those things. So what's the purpose of me trying to pretend like, oh, no, I'm right, Andromeda's actually not a naked eye object because you have to squint really hard to see it or something? Like, no, it's just easier if everybody, like, oh, sorry, got my facts wrong. You guys corrected me. Thanks for the correction. I've never understood the whole, like, oh, I have to stand by what I said regardless of whether or not it turns out to be true. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Paul the Skeptic says, did YouTube videos really help you to deconvert? I think that's cool. It might be a circle jerk, but at least it's not just a circle jerk. Yes, YouTube videos really did help me deconvert. It was something, while I was a Christian, I would spend my extra time watching YouTube videos. And I actually remember one pastor at one point specifically said to stay away from any books or blogs or YouTube videos or anything that criticized Christianity, because you need to let the people with the proper training deal with that. And for me, that just kind of like, one of my former bosses said I have an oppositional disorder, where it's like, if you tell me like, if you ask me nicely to do something, I have no problem with it. If you tell me to do something and I need to do something, then it makes me want to do the opposite. Like, so when a pastor up on the stage says, "Don't you dare look at contradictory material," then to me that's like, oh, okay, well, you say I can't handle it. Yeah, I'm going to go look at it and see if I can handle it. Turns out I can't handle it. I turned atheist over it, so maybe he was right. But anyway, so yeah, that's how I got started in the YouTube video thing, and I think it was mostly the guys at the Bible Reloaded, actually. I was watching their atheist Bible study while I was still a Christian, and I was trying to counter some of their points, and I just found out I couldn't really. Started reading the Bible for myself as well, and yeah, I didn't make it through the whole Siege of the Holy Land thing where they, destroy everybody. I was just basically at that point, like, if this is what God is, I want nothing to do with him. So yeah, that's pretty much that. Terrence Reeves says, snarky as hell and panders to your audience in such a way as to flatter their egos and stroke their sense of superiority. Definitely a circle jerk, but at least it's an honest one. 6 out of 10 would jerk again. P.S. Why is your intro, which is just scrolling text, so bloody long? Can't you just flash some titles and get on with it? Yeah, bit of a circle jerk. Yeah. I stroke egos and they stroke mine. It's all good. As far as my long intro, I have switched over to just flashing some titles. I do have an outro still that's the long thing, because believe it or not, I actually worked really hard on that, so I was proud of that, so I put the whole thing in for some of my videos, and then everybody was like, oh, it's too long, 20 seconds, I can't wait 20 seconds to watch the video, so I cut it down to like 2 seconds. So, yeah, moral of the story is you can stop telling me to shorten my intro. I already did it. I'm still getting comments about that every day. Alright, next up I've got Rosamundacek. Rosamundacek? I have no idea how to say that. Rosa. Let's call you Rosa. This is from my Argument from Reason video featuring David Wood, everybody's favorite Christian psychopath. And Rosa says that calculator clearly sounded like a Dalek, so no, it don't believe it evolved, but rather it was created by Davros. All hail Davros, the creator of all. And going further with this analogy, if Davros is God, then the doctor must be the devil. Well, in that case, call me a Satanist. And now moving on to my very first video ever, the Bible Flockbox 10 Things Vaccine Companies Don't Want You to Know video. Sacky Wacky says, the fact that your videos blur when you pause it to talk annoys the crap out of me and keeps making me think my eyesight has gotten blurry. Please fix this. Please watch my most recent videos before you make comments like this, like the shorten your intro and fix something that you did in your very first video. I was using Windows Movie Maker when I made that video. I've gotten a lot better since then, I'd like to think. So yeah, it has been fixed. If you watch my most recent videos, you'll see that I don't even keep the screenshot of the last thing that person said up while I'm talking anymore. I now use the Rhino with the psychedelic background thing that you guys all know and love and sometimes hate so much. Okay, and moving on, these next few are taken from my Malaria Will Save You from Lupus video, starting with Mr. Science. He says, I would suggest doing either private shows or monthly hangouts with fans for patron perks. This is a good idea. I probably will do that at some point, but again, right now, because of scheduling, it's very busy in the summertime, so I don't really have time to do a live show for a couple hours or whatever those usually go on for. So maybe in the wintertime, and also it would probably be better to have more patrons for that as well. So hint, hint, nudge, nudge. No, seriously though, if you don't have the money for it, or if you have other creators you want to support, that's cool. I'm not going to get upset at anybody. I'm not going to beg for money. Just whatever, if you want to support me, go for it. If not, that's fine. Just keep watching my videos. I like views. And next up, Mysteryland says, at first I thought this video were about some quack recommending malaria therapy, the intentional infection of a patient with malaria to combat another disease, mostly neurosyphilis with high fever, as a cure for lupus. You can never know what cures they imagine next. Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. I hadn't heard of malaria therapy before this, but I looked into it, and it actually turns out that there are some semi-promising results. I know that the one study that I briefly saw, they were infecting people with HIV with malaria and then monitoring them, and it seemed to be somewhat effective. So it's a thought. Like, I mean, if it works, then why not? But yeah, obviously that was under rigorously controlled conditions, and they were people that, were healthy enough that malaria wasn't going to kill them. They had the cure for malaria right there. As soon as it hit a certain stage, they would cure the malaria immediately. So it's not like they were just, randomly infecting, like, oh, these many people have AIDS, let's just give them all malaria and see what happens. Mr. Tristan says, how do you collect the energy for dealing with these fools every time? Well, I'll tell you my secret. It comes from the souls of the babies that I eat. And next up, Xenoblad says, I don't know if the development of electronics like smartphones are dependent on acknowledging biological evolution and an old universe. Seems like the subjects aren't too interdependent in my opinion. Other than that, I thought the rest of the video was entertaining. Well, Xenoblad, my point there was mostly just a quip, but the idea being that if they were deciding what was being taught in science classes, there would not be very much critical thinking skills encouraged, because as soon as you start applying critical thinking skills to religion, it just basically disappears. So they would be squishing critical thinking skills as much as they possibly could, and that would lead to a general slowing down of technological development. So that's kind of what I was getting at with that point there. Not so much that biology necessarily is the precursor to developing smartphones, but critical thinking skills that are developed in good science classes are. And Jimmy David says, the stupid thing is that mutations don't even have side effects, they simply have effects. Nature doesn't act with specific goals in mind, therefore it's a mistake to point out from among the traits that emerged out of a mutation, those who were desired outcome and those who were secondary trash. Living beings simply have to take the whole package as newly acquired traits. Natural pressures will then, in time, select which traits prove to be positive or negative, and it's also possible that all of it is positive. That's a very good point. You're absolutely right. So yeah, no side effects. It's just the effect of the mutation is to help prevent malaria, and it also has the effect of making you more susceptible to lupus and MS when you're older. And that's the whole package. It's not a side effect. It's just the effect of the mutation. So that kind of agrees with what I was going with the video. So natural pressures then will in time, like if there's a future mutation that keeps the malaria thing but gets rid of the lupus thing, that will be selected for and eventually become more dominant within the population. Okay, moving on, we have some comments on my video on ontology and the ontological argument that we're going to talk about now. Anonymous One says, square circles can exist in worlds with taxicab geometry. There can be a world of dimension 0, as single points and numbers can't be possible in it, nor can shapes. And squares don't exist in worlds with spherical geometry or hyperbolic geometry. I suppose you're right. I haven't really looked into these sort of things, but my interpretation of the possible world scenario is that when he was saying possible worlds, it meant a world fundamentally similar to ours. So with our geometry and our dimensions and things like that. So sure, you're right, but so am I. Yeah. Next up, we have the Communist Dragon, who says, Vice Rhino's background is a bunch of triangles. Vice Rhino is Illuminati... It's me says, my question is, how do we know what maximally great is? And why is love a great attribute and corruption a lesser attribute? I mean, why is love a good thing and corruption a bad thing? You have to prove what greatness is and that it exists before you can even try to define a maximally great being. It's an excellent point. Maximally great in this case is purely subjective. This is maximally great from a human perspective, and a specific human perspective at that. Like you said, how do you know that love is great and corruption is lesser? What makes corruption lesser in sense of the universe? Like there's no universal law that says corruption is a bad thing. That's purely from our perspective that it's a bad thing. I mean, Mars doesn't care if you're corrupt. It's just a rock sitting out there. So why would a maximally great being have to either be corrupt or not corrupt? Like that's so human-centric. Like it's just so arrogant of people to assume that we get to define what is considered great among the universe, like in order for this argument to work, for the maximally great being. Why do we get to define what is great and what is not great? I mean, I know the Christians are just going by, like, oh, well, the Bible says that this is a good thing and that's a bad thing, though therefore it's true. But, like, again, that's begging the question. You're starting with the conclusion. God exists, it is our God, therefore a maximally great being would have all the characteristics that our God has. But, you know, spoiler alert here, the Christian God does not have all the characteristics that you want him to have. He just has the characteristics that we have nitpicked for him in this day and age, because we've decided that things like raping virgins to make them your wife is not moral anymore. Like, that was moral at one point for those people, but it's not good for us anymore. But God's unchanging, so, you know, just try and work that out. Alright, now it's time to move on. This comment is from my response to the Dirty Christians anti-porn video. Tim3Shark says, if you want to use porn to get ideas in the bedroom, make sure it's not hentai anime. I disagree, Tim. I think a threesome with the flying spaghetti monster sounds fabulous. And on to my Questions for Atheists video, again with the Dirty Christian. Shane Nielsen says, you need to redo this video, the audio's fucked up. I sincerely hope you're being sarcastic, because in order to post that comment, you had to literally scroll right past my comment pinned at the top saying, hey, the audio's fucked up. Why don't you go to this one where the audio's not as fucked up? So for your own sake, I really hope you're being sarcastic, but this is another pet peeve of mine, when people, like, you have to scroll past the information to go down and ask a question. Like, so many people are asking me what the music is that I use in my video. I have the music posted in the description of every single video. Or where do you get your backgrounds from? I have the link to the channel on Vimeo where I get my backgrounds from. The information is right there. Just read the description before you ask your questions. Now, moving on to my response videos to the Truth About Vaccines series. This person with a name who I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, asked, do you actually do any debunking or just appeals to authority, bandwagon, and genetic fallacies? Now, I can understand from watching my video how you might think that I went to those fallacies, because I did say a lot of, like, oh, well, this person said this, so I'm not going to trust anything they say. This person was just a sales rep, so I'm not going to trust anything they say. But you know what? They were just, like, the arguments that I did actually debunk, and, like, I did do debunking. You did see my whole list of, you know, science journal articles that I used as sources for the thing. I didn't just put those there for fun. I actually used them, and I made points about them. But they were making pretty much the same points all the time, like, no matter who it was. So, like, for the sake of skipping a shit ton of their video, which I haven't even gotten all the way through the first episode, it's an hour and a half long, and my videos are each about 20 to 30 minutes long on that subject. So for the sake of brevity, I was skipping those people, and rather than just skip them and, you know, make it look like I was trying to omit information, I did put them in there and be like, well, you see, this is this person talking about this, and this is why we're not trusting this person. Let's go on to the more qualified person and actually debunk what that person's saying when they're saying the same thing. Does that make sense? I've made sense to me at the time, at least. Now, from my How Science Works According to Creationists video, let's start with Richard P. Bryan. My wife is a basic research biochemist and faculty member at a major university who conducts 100% of her research under controlled laboratory conditions. She would find it beyond absurd that so-called historical science, like much of geology, is somehow not valid science, and always unreliable. For example, evolutionary theory implies that you will see certain things in the fossil record, common morphology, biogeography, comparative embryology, biochemistry, and of course DNA, all of which have been more than abundantly confirmed. It has also been observed. For example, critics of evolution often fall back on the maxim that no one has ever seen one species split into two. Well, that's clearly a straw man, because most speciation takes far longer than our lifespan to occur. It's also not true. We have seen species split, and we continue to see species diverging every day. I have nothing to add to this. I just really love this comment, so I wanted to point it out to everybody and let you see it. And finally, we're ending on a serious note here with D-Personal. I just wish Vice Rhino wasn't Islamophobic. I was very disappointed in this. Like, I knew this was coming as soon as I did any video on Islam. I knew somebody would come out and call me Islamophobic, but, like, I have been so nasty to Christianity. Not once has anybody ever accused me of any sort of bigotry towards Christianity. Like, that just doesn't happen. And I have been so nasty to it, so disrespectful towards it. I have made 2 videos on Islam, and this person thinks I'm Islamophobic. And they're not the only one, but they're the first one that I noticed. So take that opinion. I mean, like, it's this. I'm holding Islam up to the same standard. The only reason I haven't done Islam as much as I have Christianity is because I'm not as familiar with Islam. But it's like, take for instance the Boogeyman, the guy who I did the collaboration with a little while ago. He lives in an area of the world where it's frowned upon, let's say, to not be Muslim. In fact, one of his friends was recently murdered by a mob for a Facebook post about Islam. Like, is it Islamophobic for me to not want my friends to lose their friends because of religion? Like, I just don't get that. Why does Islam get this extra protection when they are obviously they are by far the most problematic religion in the world today. By far. But they get this little protective group around them saying that, like, anyone who criticizes them is Islamophobic. I don't consider myself Islamophobic. I have worked with people that are Muslim, and I have had friends that are Muslim. Some of the most pleasant people I know are Muslim. But they're not good Muslims because they're not following Islam. I don't get it. Like, Islam clearly says to do these things and kill people that are apostates and, kill unbelievers if they refuse to convert. So the people that are not following that are good people. They are good people, but they're not good Muslims. I'm just disappointed. I'm not mad at you, D-Personal. I'm just disappointed. That classic dad line there. But anyways, that's it for today. That's all the time I have. I have to get off to work, so I'll see you next time. Hopefully I'll have a video up next week. I can't promise anything, though, because, the weekend in Montreal, I have to drive back. I have no idea what my work schedule is like for next week, so it might be crazy. I might not have a chance to. Hopefully I will, but I'll see you next time.